Check.
Are we supposed to be? Someone give me a thumbs up when we're supposed to go.
All
Oh,
right.
sweet.
Oh.
That was a thumbs up way faster than I thought. Okay, then. So I guess we're going to be like, hello, MomoCon. How are you guys doing? Let me fucking hear it. Yeah, that's what I thought. Welcome to the Escapist Podcast Live. We are your hosts for tonight. Thank you for joining us. My name is Janelle Bonanno. I am the editorial director of gaming for Defy Media and The Escapist, and I'm joined by my lovely associates. Take it away.
Josh Vanderwall, I'm the editor-in-chief at The Escapist.
My name is Josh Engen, and I am a lowly freelance writer for The Escapist.
Wow. But he's so cool. We still
Super
like
cool.
him.
All right, fine.
If
You
not
can be
the
the eye
coolest.
candy just because of
I
that
know.
introduction.
Josh Engen is
I
our
don't-
eye candy because he has the cooler beard. That's
I
what
don't
we
need
decided.
permission to be the eye candy. It just happens. All right, we're done with it.
Those who might not be familiar with The Escapist, and specifically The Escapist podcast, we do a weekly podcast. We pick a topic for the week and just kind of discuss at length, our own thoughts and opinions about the various aspects of that. So,
But what we're going to do this time is be super interactive with you guys. So you guys are part of the show. If you guys don't show up and help us out, it's going to be a shitty panel. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be shit. So, have topics ready, have questions ready. The mic is right here. Feel free to get up at any time and come join the discussion, give us topics, converse, be a star, whatever you want to do.
or make jokes in 140 characters. That's also
Yep.
another thing that I hear the internet does. So, I figure with the Indie Game Awards going on tomorrow, I've spent a lot of today just kind of playing indie games.
Who has played indie games so far here at MomoCon? Raise your hand. Woo! Okay,
Nice.
yell out real quick, and I'm going to repeat you when you yell it out. What indie game do you like so far here at MomoCon? Brawlhalla, yeah!
Nice.
What about you, man in the back?
That Just Shapes and Beats, I think it's what it's called.
Just Shapes
Just
and
Shapes
Beats?
and Beats, yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. What did you like about it?
The music, it was cool.
The music is important in games.
Minimalist. I'm a minimalist. I like it.
Yeah.
I have
You
not
don't
yet
sound like a
gotten that.
minimalist. You have a lot to you. It sounds like you're a very, very, very interesting person. Yeah, I'm full of compliments. You'll find that.
So indie games, the scene has been around for a little while now, but it's definitely picked up a lot of steam in recent years. And I think just kind of the definition of what an indie game is, I think it's an important distinction. So most AAA titles, everything else, have publishers behind them that finance to some extent, and often to a very large extent, the development of the game. Indies, more or less, fund it themselves. They get their friends together, borrow whatever money they can, assemble a team, and make a game. I think it's just a super noble thing to do. It's just like, I really want to make a game. I want to get this message, get this gameplay mechanic, whatever, out there to the people. If I have to risk my life savings to do it, I'll do so. And they often do, and you can't help but respect that. Steam, I think with the green light and everything else, very much opened the doors to just a much wider breadth of indie games, indie developers and such. But with kind of the democratization of game development, yay!
Freedom!
There has also come the problem of the glut of just really terrible, terrible games.
So what do you mean when you say the democratization of games? That's a big word. I don't know.
I mean,
Is it
literally anybody can go out, learn a programming language, learn the development tools, the engines, etc., and just make a game. I mean, virtually anybody, regardless of your education, even if you don't have the skill set, you can develop that skill set and make a game, no matter who you are.
See, when you say the democratization in games, what I automatically think of is I don't know, Star Citizen. and Kickstarter, and let's take something that had a 500,000 goal, bump it up to like 10 million. I don't know what's that, 3 billion, something.
Something like
Something like that.
All of the money, I think.
And let's all put in our input on what we want this game to be.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the really awesome things I've seen with the indie development scene, especially with early access and stuff. So you have these developers kind of build this prototype game, put it on early access, and then rely on the community for feedback on how they can improve the game, what tweaks they can make, what kind of mechanics they can introduce, things they need to remove, and et cetera. So yeah, that's absolutely a big part of it. Although I think an interesting discussion point is whether or not Kickstarter projects are actually indie games, because I think one of the core defining attributes of an indie game is that they don't have the financial backing of a publisher. And if we just look at Kickstarter or the people on Kickstarter as publishers, like, then they have the financial backing. So
Okay, so who here has backed a game on Kickstarter? Whoa, that is way less
far
than I thought.
fewer than I would have expected. Absolutely.
So, Twitch, we had like 3 hands. 3. Okay, so that ruins my next question. But ultimately, when I back a game on Kickstarter, I don't see myself as a risk taker. And that's what I would define a publisher as, right? More like a VC house that puts money up front to take the risk for the developer in whether or not that risk is going to make a monetary advantage.
Absolutely. I think it could still be argued, though, that every backer on a Kickstarter is in fact taking a risk, given how frequently we see Kickstarter projects just disappear with 0 product as a result.
I think
Everybody's
those people
just
should
out
be
money.
sued out of oblivion.
Absolutely, I totally
As a lawyer,
agree.
I'm just
but
saying.
Ultimately, it is a risk, albeit much smaller for any individual. Josh, what do you think? Are Kickstarter-funded projects indie games?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I definitely think that they would still qualify as indie games, if only because there's this direct interaction between the developers and the community. I think a lot of big published, like huge published games, there's so much of it happens behind the scene, and then it just gets kicked out into the world, and the community doesn't really have a lot of say in it. But I mean, there's games that come from developers that used to be huge that have sort of ditched publishers to take on that role themselves, like Underworld Ascension recently, where they were like, we want to make this cool game, no publisher wants anything to do with us, so we're going to like interact directly with the community and make this game. And I mean, that sounds, I don't think it's necessarily just, I think that an indie game isn't necessarily just defined as like one individual or one group of individual taking on the financial responsibility or whatever. I think it's when a community sort of comes together and we make this game, and sans a publisher and sans big budgets and stuff like that. I don't know.
Wait, come up to the mic.
Yeah, come on, man.
No, dude, we're doing it the right way.
Let's do it.
Nobody on Twitch could hear you there.
Oh, fun fact, the term indie is short for independent.
Yes.
Yeah.
I figure that's something to think about when you want to know how to define an indie game.
You can't mic drop and walk away. Get back here. I saw that. What was that? No, I understand that, but what defines independent?
Well,
Let me
I
ask
guess free from shareholders. That's what I think when I think of
Okay,
Sure.
so no corporation is what you just said.
I guess when I think of an indie game, I think of like something really creative. It's like these ideas are what you can come up with when you don't have shareholders that you need to please.
So ultimately,
So you can take more risks.
So ultimately, a shareholder is someone who has a financial stake in a corporation. So most publishers are corporations, but Kickstarter backers or a group of people funding you isn't shareholders. So if you have 10 really rich people that give you $10 million, are you still an indie game? There's no shareholders.
And it's even trickier too, because when you think about it, like a lot of people don't. For a lot of people, indie is this feeling, right? that Child of Light game. Has anybody played Child of Light? Feels like an indie game, right?
Ubisoft.
Published by Ubisoft. That Journey game, remember that game? It was awesome, super cool indie game, published by Sony. So like there's this feeling that a lot of people get when they think about indie.
Like a vibe
Yeah.
in the game?
But like the definition of what is actually indie is like way more nebulous.
Well, indie games don't come on a disc. I can guarantee that much.
Have you seen IndieBox?
Yeah, actually,
I've never heard of that. I'll
Absolutely.
look that up.
IndieBox is amazing.
check it out. They basically they package indie games. They put a full printed instruction manual made with the help of the developers. They put a bunch of loot in there, just random swag that's associated with the game, and the game on USB key in the box. It's super cool. It's like a subscription model. It's amazing, frankly. Like I checked it out at PAX East this year. I'd heard of it before, but I hadn't actually seen the product. But man, if you're into indie games,
And you like box products,
and
which I do.
yeah, if you
I
grew
want,
up,
the, I want the cloth map, people. What happened to the cloth map?
Yeah.
Bring
if
that
you
shit back.
grew up with the bookshelf full of video game boxes, this is probably just the kind of thing that you would be very interested in, especially if you're into the indie scene. But yeah, Indie Box, definitely check it out.
Wow, quite a sales
They have
pitch.
a booth
They're
here?
here. I forgot. I saw them here. So yeah, they're
didn't
on
know
the
that.
floor.
Check them
Definitely
out.
go give them a look. You'll
Give them a hug.
Probably be surprised and a hug.
And a kiss.
As I understand, they package everything by hand, thousands and thousands of boxes.
They
so
need a hug.
They desperately need hugs.
All right, I'll look into that.
Awesome. Check it out.
Sweet.
Thanks, man.
I think we've got some people behind you, so let's get them up.
Yeah,
to the mic.
let's do it. Wait, let me roll up my sleeves.
Mine are already rolled up.
Fucking ready. Let's go. You.
All right. I was just thinking about Kickstarter projects usually start with an independent team, just a small group of people pitching an idea to the masses. And the masses say, all right, we want this, take our money, make it happen. I guess with some projects like the Oculus Rift being, I guess, the biggest one, like this individual team can basically sell out, I guess, the production basically to a larger company. And I think that's something to factor in when trying to consider whether or not it could still count as an indie project, is whether the infrastructure behind it, the project, and the group of people trying to make it, I guess that kind of signifies how much direct input the original team or the developer has from their vision versus what a large company and their shareholders and associated, I guess, luggage has over it. It's a very different feel for a project you have when you just have a small-time artist, developer just create a piece of music or create a video game or any kind of technology and basically say, do you want this? Give me money. I'll try to make this happen as per this vision that I have. And whether or not they get that funding versus a big company saying, all right, what do the masses want? Let's make this idea happen, and then let's try to sell it to the masses
Yeah.
after it's come, I guess, to fruition.
Well, it almost can be argued that type of approach almost helps games be better, though, right? Does that make it better or worse?
Well, I think indie games on Kickstarter. I made a kind of generalization at the beginning, posing the question, but I think ultimately it just has to be taken on a case-by-case basis, right? There are very well-established development companies that are putting games on Kickstarter just to see if they have public support. It's kind of a litmus test for whether the game will be successful, whether it's worth bothering making the game, publishing it, etc.
Which I hate.
Yeah, that bothers me too.
But alternately, they're
But there are also well-established developers out there who don't have publishers or support anymore, Obsidian, and can't make the game they want and have to go to Kickstarter to make it.
Absolutely.
Huh?
The creator of Castlevania.
The creator of Castlevania, Pillars of Eternity by Obsidian. There's a lot of case subjects for
Banjo
that
and
now.
Kazooie guys recently, right?
I used to love Banjo and Kazooie. Yeah! I like you.
I like you
We're
too.
gonna be friends.
But yeah, ultimately, and when you look at something like Oculus, it's kind of hard to say. If even if it did start as an indie project, whether or not you want to classify it as that, like I think ultimately when you have a giant corporation buy you out for like $1 billion, like I don't think there's anything indie about that anymore. Like I think you've lost the indie credibility. Like you're just not indie at this point. So yeah, I mean if you have like the corporate infrastructure, the manufacturing facilities, et cetera, to create mass produce your product, chances are you're probably not indie. That's I feel like it's largely a matter of even getting away from very strict definitions, just kind of the nebulous idea that Ingen mentioned. If you are a solo or with a small group working on some kind of product, be it a game or tech or whatever, and you have very little logistical support, then you're probably an indie. I feel like that's a good bet.
I think it goes a little further than just the amount of infrastructure they have behind it. I also think, I guess, the purity of the team's vision for what they want to accomplish versus what a large corporation might want from, I guess, a broader perspective.
Right, you feel like publishers are looking to they don't want to take a lot of risk, right? So
Yeah,
they're
basically.
trying to put their money where they know they can make money back. And there's a lot of artists out there that are just trying to make cool art, and they don't care if it's a huge risk, right?
Publishers take a lot of risks, though.
Yeah,
I don't want to
absolutely.
be that person, but so this is an old statistic from like 2011, 2010, but publishers about in 2010. If you consider all the money they expend on the development of games and projects you never see, only about 2% of that revenue invested ever gets to a completed game, and 1% of all completed games makes up 100% of their revenue for the year. I would say that's a big risk.
That's a good point, but it's also a difference between pitching a idea to the masses and trying to sell an idea to the masses.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you're trying to pitch it and they give you the money to make it happen, then you've already got, I guess, a customer base who's going to buy your product.
Yeah.
Versus taking a risk and then basically saying, all right, now buy this, we did this cool thing. And it's iffy whether or not you might do it. You might do something amazing, you might do something fantastic, but you don't get enough, I guess, people interested in the first place. Versus being able to market the idea in the first place before it becomes a product.
Yeah, I think that's a big hurdle that indie developers in general have to figure out how to cross. Promotion. A lot of these people are programmers, artists, etc. They have no idea how PR works. Like, right? I mean, they have no idea who to reach out to. They have no idea what to do when they do get in touch with somebody.
PR is a specific business department for a reason. Marketing is a specific business department for a reason. It's because they are specific skills and talents required to be able to accomplish that goal. And I think marketing and PR are the biggest hurdles for any indie game
And
that they don't get the benefit of from a publisher.
And I don't think that a lot of people realize how much it costs to market a game. I mean, a lot of statistics will put the cost of marketing as about the same as the cost of development.
And sometimes significantly more.
Yeah,
Too,
Yeah.
which is why huge games like Battlefield, the Battlefield series, have a super hard time going into the black. They sell millions of copies. It's a really huge game. It's a big game. People love it, but they because the marketing costs are so huge, they have a really difficult time. They're almost always in the red.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, we've got a little bit of
Yeah,
line
I
forming.
understand.
So
Good questions, man.
get into yeah, definitely.
I just want to point out that like the marketing budget for GTA 5 is $256 million. Let that wash over you, right? That's a lot of fucking money. Like, and as an indie developer, you have to see, GTA was the best-selling game ever.
Ever.
Okay,
Best-selling
still ever.
media
Okay.
property ever, I think.
Okay, so, but why? Well, part of the reason why was they spent $256 million marketing the damn thing. Like, you have to also take that into account.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Janelle.
I
How are
feel
you?
like
I'm doing
I
well.
feel like
Josh
I
is?
recognize you. Yeah.
Hey.
It's JQ.
Not to be flippant, but does it matter? Does it matter if a game's indie or big studio or 50 studios or first party or third party? I mean, as consumers, shouldn't our main focus be, is it fun?
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, that's absolutely a fair question. And ultimately, does it matter? No, not really. I
It
think
shouldn't matter the gamer at the very least. Like the person playing the gamer, it absolutely shouldn't matter, right? You should be buying games based on whether or not you like them or not.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's going to depend on what you're looking to get out of, your gaming experience, right? So if you are looking for something that's just wholly unique, completely novel, chances are you're not going to get that from a AAA game because they have to appeal to literally millions and millions of people across
Yeah.
the world in order to make a profit. So they just can't make a game that is, a niche interest. So yeah, I mean, if you want something that's wholly unique, you've never experienced it before, chances are you're going to have to go indie for that. So I think it doesn't really matter ultimately when you're playing the game. It's just whether or not you enjoy playing the game. But if you're in the market for a new game, the indie scene is probably a good place to look for something that you have never seen before. But if you're looking for another really solid shooter, the AAA scene is probably where you want to be.
Real quick follow-up, sorry. If not when you're playing it, it doesn't matter, then when does it matter?
When you're exploring the options, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's again, if you want something, a great example for me is The Bridge. I don't know, very, very small game. Likely nobody here is. Raise your hand if you've heard of The Bridge. We've got two people. Awesome. Hey, that's actually two more than I expected. So these two people in college, Case Western Reserve, built this game. Right? It's just a puzzle platformer with an MC Escher aesthetic. It was amazing. Like, it was just a really, really incredible experience all the way through. Navigating Escher architecture is like a really cool thing. And so, yeah, I mean, if you are looking for something like that, you probably don't need to bother exploring the indie AAA offerings just because, it's very niche and they can't make a lot of money on it. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the exploration of your options where it does matter whether you're looking at indie or AAA.
And I think the focus also matters when you're looking at, where you are looking for your product base that you are going to dedicate X amount of dollars to. A lot of people ignore the indie scene because it's not marketed well. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I want to stress is that depending on what you're looking for, you will find things in the indie scene that you will not find in AAA titles. And so in that part, it's important to at least get the word out and get some exposure for them because the exposure currently is not there.
The thing that, for me, and gamers hate when I get on this weird little this soapbox, and it's not really a soapbox, but I think that most gamers don't. And I just almost said this exact same thing. I don't think they realize how much it costs to make a game like this. And when you've got companies like Activision and Ubisoft and whoever else like using the Henry Ford approach, just churning them out assembly line style. It's so much less money for them to make a huge game than it is for a tiny studio that's 3 people that have to play artist, marketer, developer, all these roles, and they might be a great developer and they might be a terrible artist, so they have to learn that. So there's all these things that they have to do all by themselves, and I think a lot of gamers get really frustrated when they buy a game like Journey, which has a 2-hour campaign and it costs them $30 or whatever. And so the place that it does matter is I'm not going to say almost always, but a lot of times you're going to pay more for less when you are supporting the indie scene than when you are supporting the AAA scene. Because like Grand Theft Auto and what The Witcher just came out, it's got like 150 hours of gameplay, and no indie developer will ever be able to hit that because it's impossible, right? It's impossible for a 3-person studio to make a game that has that much content in it.
And when you think about The Witcher 3 in particular, I talked to CD Projekt Red last year, and they had told me that there's something around 160 different storyline paths that an individual can take through the game.
Yeah.
Like that's if you really think about that, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Even if you wrote that down in a book, that would be volumes.
Yeah, encyclopedia style books. But yeah, you're when you decide you're going to buy an indie game, you are supporting artists that are doing this, and they're barely able to feed their families. Journey is my favorite example of the panel for some reason today. But that game company said that if they hadn't won Game of the Year that year, that they would have filed bankruptcy because they were like putting their houses up for sale and stuff like that, and taking out huge loans to try and pay for that game. And they barely scraped by. They barely made it into the black, and it won tons and tons of awards. But people, there's just not a huge market for it, unfortunately. Yeah. So support it.
Well, I mean, and also, the fact of the matter is, look, we're all gamers. Every gamer out there has a wallet with only so much in it.
Yeah.
Like, you have to make choices, and those choices are limited, and they're basically going to be on average 2 to 3 games a year. Mm-hmm. So where do you decide to put your money? A lot of the time, it's important to make sure that, when you put your money somewhere, you're getting value out of it.
Yeah.
And how do you find value from indie games when you're paying a premium?
Yeah. Wait, was that a question for me?
It was a question.
I don't
Do you want to answer it?
I don't know that I have a good answer. My answer is always I want to give those developers money because I know that they don't have a lot, and so I can afford $5 or $6 on Steam or whatever.
It's
I
like
think
the
it's
Kickstarter
also
syndrome.
important, it's not just a matter of charity, right? Like you're also incentivizing that developer and other developers to continue exploring new avenues of gameplay and stuff. So. It's not just charity. There's also, hey guys, keep doing this. You're doing a good job. I like what you did here. Like, let's see
absolutely.
some more of this. So,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing? I want to ask you about.
Could you speak a little louder?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you know of a game called Cube World?
Cube World.
Yes.
it sounds super familiar, but
It came out, I believe, a couple years ago, and it didn't follow the Kickstarter. It don't have a developer. It was all self-developed and self-distributed. And I bought it when it first came out, and they said, hey, buy this now, you get all the future updates for free. You don't have to pay anything else. And then it kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know, do you think that, you seem to be big proponents of indie gaming, and I appreciate that, but do you believe that developers need publishers, or do you believe gamers need publishers?
That's a super good question.
I think I can answer that. Absolutely. Gamers do need publishers because publishers are the ones typically that market the games, that get the name of the game and the developer out there to gamers. Not every gamer just goes and checks every Kickstarter project, goes to Steam, checks every early access game, every greenlight game. A lot of us gamers in general just don't have the time or the interest to find the games on their own. So I think publishers play a very important role in getting games in front of gamers, right?
But it's not just that, right? It's like, so we all are in journalism. We all are writers or work with writers, right? Everybody knows about the writer, but a lot of times people forget about the editor, right? The publisher in the gaming industry is like the editor in the writing industry. Like, a lot of times they iron out creases. Now, granted, a lot of times they fuck shit up. Like, they're just like, I don't like this thing because I don't think it's going to sell, change it, and it's the worst decision in the world, and it breaks the game.
Businessmen
that happens.
making game design decisions is just never a good idea.
But there are bad publishers out there. Yay. But there are great publishers out there that really help a vision and a project along, and they work to help the consumer. And I think that, does every game need a publisher? No, because I think there are indie houses out there or development houses out there that have great leadership teams that have visions that they can manage. Do I think some creatives need management of that type to help them through their vision? Yes.
Absolutely.
Because the Cube World example that I mentioned, the guy, I believe it was him and his wife. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do your thing, man.
Okay.
The mic is yours.
I believe the developer of Cube World was him and his wife, and I haven't followed it in a while. I could be completely wrong. He could have come back, but from what I've seen, they took the money and ran essentially.
I'm going to tell you what. What I think that is false advertising and bullshit business practices, and it should not be allowed. That is why I just don't like Kickstarter in general, because I think they're just glorified pre-orders. I don't like pre-orders in general, because I think you have to serve me a product before you get my money. Like, I think that's wrong, and they should never have done that, and someone should sue them over it.
Yeah, I feel like there should definitely be like a stronger system for ramifications of games that go to early access on Steam, for example. 100,000 people buy it, and then they never actually publish the game. It never goes gold. I mean, that's ridiculous. That should absolutely never happen. The sad reality is it does. So I think there just needs to be systems in place to punish people for doing that, to disincentivize
Well, that's why
others
the
from doing so.
platforms who put these systems in place to allow crowdfunding should protect the people that they are accepting money from.
I don't actually. I would hope that Kickstarter, you back a project and they deliver zero product.
Never
to
gonna
you.
How
Like,
Kickstarter doesn't want to be in that lawsuit. Never gonna happen.
Well, they will be eventually. So,
How do you get around, like, when this developer self-developed and self-distributed the game? They didn't have any Kickstarter. You could buy the game on their site, and then you get the updates for free.
Look, if
Better
I-
Business Bureau, frankly.
If I grow strawberries out in my front yard of my house, and I try to sell you strawberry jam, and there ain't no strawberries in it, I'm in the wrong, right? So if I tell you there's going to be X, Y, and Z in this game in the future if you give me money now, and there ain't,
So I mean, I feel like
Same thing.
There aren't a lot of options for that kind of situation as to what you can do to either recoup your money
the
or.
problem is suing people is too expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like, when I was in law school, I learned there are 7 degrees of anger. And it's only until you get to the 7th degree does anyone ever fucking sue anybody. And because it's like, I'm upset, but there's nothing I can do about it. And then you get to the point where like, I'm really angry and I lost money, but is the money that I have to spend for a lawyer going to be more than the money I already lost? And with indie games and with any game, if you're shelling out $30 to $60 for a game, lawyers are going to cost you way more, right?
Yeah.
And what's your recoupment? The $60 you paid?
So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't know that there's a lot you can do about that except let people know. Absolutely, spread the word on social media and such. Like, if these guys try to sell you another game in the future, just don't buy it. Like, because they failed to deliver on any of their promises, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, realistically, getting $50 back from a developer, not going to be worth the $1,000 you spend on a lawyer. So it's just, there's not a whole lot you can do in a real legal sense in that regard. So otherwise, it's just a matter of letting everybody know not to support this developer in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to put out there, like, we just talked about a lot of negative stuff, but, what year was it? I think it was like 2000, maybe 2000. There was an indie game out there called Auditorium. Has anyone ever heard of it? An amazing game. It blew my mind when it came out. It was this fantastic puzzler game where you used rays of sound that went along the screen, and you had to make bounce fields to make those rays of sound interact with nodes, and you slowly created a symphony. This was way before the days of Kickstarter, way before the days of crowdfunding, and they just had a PayPal account, and I gave them $5. It was the best $5 I ever spent in my life. So there are great stories out there too. I don't want this to be super negative. Like, there are great stories and there are bad stories, and the moral of the story is you have to be vigilant in where you put your money. Buyer beware.
Yeah, it's always a risk. So I mean, just be prepared to accept the fact that you know, occasionally you're gonna get screwed. But by and large, you know, I hear far fewer stories about people getting screwed over by terrible, evil developers than I do of people finding a really, really awesome gem of a game, you know, by Kickstarter or whatever. So.
And let's not forget that indie developers don't have it easy, right? Even if it was, and I have no idea what happened with that game, but even if developers have plans to make these games in the future, if they only sell 10 copies, it's going to be super hard for them to keep them up. And
Hey,
ho.
Don't sell me something you can't deliver.
And I'm not saying, and I'm not defending
I don't
them.
want this River Cry story.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
I'm not defending that kind of practice. If they can't deliver it, they shouldn't promise it. Period. But I have a lot of sympathy for indie developers that are always working so close to, like, pretty much always in the red, and so I feel bad for them. I want to give all the indie developers hugs all the time. I want to give all the freelance writers hugs too.
But couldn't you say the same thing about something you can't deliver for Child of Light, where, you know, you had the publisher EA, you know, kind of rush it out?
I just said EA was the worst publisher.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
no,
like
no.
10 minutes ago.
Oh, no, I know, but,
Okay.
like,
I just want to
feel-
make sure we're on the same
I
page.
feel Child of Light could have been a better game if EA hadn't have published it, because the creative directors and whatnot could have actually done the things that they wanted to, like put in, spoilers, you know, multiple endings in the game, like was advertised at the end of the game. I feel like, you know, if EA hadn't rushed them to put out the game so that way they could recoup their money that they spent, that it could have been a lot better.
Yeah, I think this is largely just a case of businessmen making game design decisions. It just should never happen. You know, occasionally for publishers, businesses in general operate on quarterly budgets, right? So if they need to get this game shipped so they can, you know, recoup the development costs this quarter, or their shareholders lose interest in the stock, like, that's what they do. And it's often a terrible, terrible decision. But, you know, ultimately that's, you know, it's just kind of the reality of business. So
Yeah, and you
I
do
think-
things
Yeah.
like, I don't know, ruin a decades-long franchise like SimCity, or Dungeon Keeper, or where's my
list of EA
list
games.
of EA shitholdings?
You have an Excel spreadsheet
But
of
then
EA
you also
titles.
have indie games like that are coming out that are actually like those old games, like Darkest Dungeon, you know, where I feel like if they were to go to a publisher would completely ruin that game.
Yeah, oh,
What-
definitely.
So I feel like I wouldn't classify Child of Light as an indie game. It's more of an indie-esque game.
It's
because-
indie-esque. Yeah. Indie has, for the AAA publisher world, become more of a genre type,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say. And they're trying to classify games in that genre type because it represents an ideal.
They're also trying to grab them all up. So they
Yeah,
can get
and
them
whether you can achieve that ideal is questionable. But I think that's what they're attempting to do.
And they're using tiny little studios to do it. I mean, it's a lot of times they're very, very indie studios that approach the publisher and said, like, this is what we're doing, you want to give us some money? And the publisher was like, sure, why not? But at some point, the money, like, publishers get scary about the money they invest.
And let me play devil's advocate for a second, because I was a lawyer for a bit. And, you know, I've worked on publisher-developer agreements. And those agreements are long. They require a lot of things from both sides. But ultimately, what it comes down to is the publisher is shelling out a lot of money with very little control over how the money's being spent, because they're not the ones spending it. It's, you're a developer, you spend it the way you think is appropriate to meet these guidelines. And sometimes those guidelines are not met. Sometimes that money is misspent. And sometimes the goals and the promises that are expected to be delivered, like that game we just talked about or some failed Kickstarters, don't happen. So in that essence, what is a publisher supposed to do once you've lost all this money and you know shit's going down the fan? Like,
But, you know, like with Child of Light, for instance, you know, a lot of people bought the game. Some people really do,
I bought it.
You know, love the game, but EA, you know, rushed them to, they could have probably made a lot more money by actually having a completed game.
Yeah, I think it's, again, important to note businesses in general aren't necessarily focused on the long term. So if they can make $1 million right now, they'd rather do that than make $2 million next year.
That's
And
why I like it.
75% of the money that's made in a game is made in the first 30 days that it's on the market.
And also consider what Child of Light represented in the space at the time. It was one of the first games on the scene for the next generation of platforms, right?
Yeah.
So how do you preserve that window and that appeal without rushing something and losing it?
Yeah, I feel
Because
like
if you are not first on the scene there, you start becoming lost in the noise.
pure
start becoming Square
speculation.
Enix.
Yeah, pure speculation here. But I would assume that the situation with Child of Light was the developers didn't hit the deadlines to have the game completed the way they wanted it to. Probably asked for extra time to, add the other endings, et cetera, et cetera. And EA was just like, sorry, we had an agreement. We're publishing on this date, so get it ready for this date. And they move forward with that.
But they still didn't finish it though, because in the ending, it actually says replay this to get different.
No, I know.
endings.
There's nothing to replay.
It's the same over and over again.
So yeah, I mean, it's again probably just a business decision and probably a poor one, frankly. But so many business decisions are. So.
Because none of people bought those stupid downloadable gems to make new weapons.
No, I certainly did.
That upset me. I'm not gonna lie. Give me the gems in the game, damn it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Hi there.
Hey.
My question with the crowdfunding, there's no denying there's been some really amazing shit come out of, Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Like Shadowrun Returns being one of my favorite example. But then you've also got Double Fine. So it's definitely a
Why do
flip of the-
people keep giving? Who's the problem in this scenario? Double Fine or the people who keep giving Double Fine money? Let's be honest.
A little bit of both, maybe?
Okay, as long as we're honest.
A little bit of both, maybe. But my question is, we touched on it a little bit earlier. There's no guarantee of a completed product, and we just discussed that, lawsuits aren't really effective. What measures do you think could be put in place to hold these guys more accountable so that, like when Konami puts their head up their ass, people can still make passion projects?
If it was up to me, which it's not, nobody gives a shit what I say. But if it was up to me, I would say that people stop using Kickstarter until Kickstarter decides that their consumers are worth it to protect them.
Yeah, I feel like Kickstarter and Steam as well for early access stuff that just never goes to goes live or whatever. They need to have systems in place to protect the consumers. They need to just be able to recoup the money from the developers that they've already paid out, and just deal with that. Or worst case scenario, Kickstarter just needs to eat the losses.
Because think about it, right now, joke's on you, buddy.
Yeah,
right?
true.
Kickstarter got their pay.
Yeah.
Steam got their pay.
And it's the consumers getting
They
screwed.
don't care if they get the game or not.
Yeah.
Ha ha. No.
So
no,
yeah.
I keep my money. Earn it.
Consumer protections in all of the various platforms where you can, support a game before it's actually been launched, I think is absolutely crucial to going forward with this, because there's a lot of good that Kickstarter can do, but at the same time, if people lose faith in it because a third of the games or 1/10 of the games or whatever just never actually come out, then the whole business model just falls. It just fails. So I think they definitely need to work in systems of protection for the buyers.
There just needs to be some big monetary reimbursement policy of
absolutely.
some sort.
You backed a project, you got no product from it, you get your money back. End of story.
And you know what? I think it's incumbent on journalists in the space to cover this better. I think they're doing a piss poor job because part of a journalist's job is to inform and protect the consumer. And I don't think this information is being disseminated properly enough. And so I think not enough people realize what they're risking. They don't realize how many Kickstarters do fail, and they're still giving their money in a crapshoot. Sit back.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Hey there.
Hello.
I was wondering what you thought about sort of the call and response of genre between more mainstream games and indie games. Like essentially indie games filling in areas like horror, for example, where mainstream games had sort of left a gap. Like, for example, people were fairly dissatisfied with perhaps the last 3 or 4 Silent Hill games, and nowadays there's a pretty huge boom in indie horror, for example. So I guess I was wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah, I just want to. It's not directly answering your question, but I just want to make a comment directed to it. You know, Alien Isolation was an amazing game. And the publishers of Alien Isolation a couple of weeks ago came out and said that it was a sales failure. Think about that. That's crazy. Like, that's why we don't get the good horror and the niche games in the AAA space. Because when they do a fantastic job in that area, they're looking for multi-million sales to justify their budgets. And when they don't get multi-million in a niche field, which should be obvious, like, then it's a failure.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
so we need the indie space to take those reins up.
Yeah, I feel like when games, genres in general, get kind of lose their appeal to the mass audience, then it is absolutely kind of in the purview of the indie developers to pick that up, aim for that niche audience. You know, a lot of indie developers aim to get a broad audience for their game, and I feel like that's the wrong approach for somebody who has no money for marketing, no experience in PR. You know, what they need to do is really target the demographic they're looking for. You know, a horror game, just find the horror game lovers out there, you know, even if they're not a mass audience anymore. But fill the niche, absolutely. And I think indie is the best space, best hope we have for people to continue to fill the niche of gaps we see in kind of genres in AAA.
I think this is, I mean, I think that this is the reason we need the indie space, because there's so many publishers. I mean, when a publisher makes, you know, 10% of their money, like 10% over their budget plus their marketing, a lot of them, they're not interested in it, right? They want to make all the money instead of some of the money. And the indie space is, they don't care. They just want to make games. They want to make cool art, and they want to make a living making cool art.
If they can pay rent, they're
yeah,
happy.
exactly. And that's like that's awesome. And if we can support that space, and if we can get more people to make cool art, I'm all for it. And a lot of times that means letting go of publisher model, because they're not going to make all the money.
Thank you.
Hi, how's everybody?
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I wasn't going to ask a question, then I heard this stuff about Kickstarter, and it made me think of another area where consumer protections are pretty much nil, and that's in in-app purchases and in-game currencies.
Yes.
For an indie game, you risk buying in-game currency, and tomorrow the game shut down, the server's not there, and you bought something. Can I mention specific companies?
Yeah, go for it. Whatever.
Okay.
We're not attached.
Well, when Gazillion came out and did Marvel Heroes, a bunch of friends of mine, we signed up early. And we really enjoyed the game, but it was kind of still under development. It was a little bit of a failure. So they brought on new people to try to keep it going. At this point, I think it's important to note that, as you said, they're not necessarily interested in long-term success.
Yeah.
So some of my friends spent thousands on this game. I spent a couple hundred. And the next thing you know, we all got banned because we were criticizing the game and the direction they were taking it. It's still under development. They were doing updates every week, you know, typically on peak day, you know.
Wait,
Wait,
you
time
got
out?
banned
Back
for
up.
criticizing the
On
game?
their forums. That's not what they tell you they're banned for, but you know, you put an inflammatory mark next thing you know,
Yeah,
you can't log in. Nobody's talking to you.
When did this happen?
This last year, but they banned hundreds of people who spent hundreds of dollars on this game. We went to other forums like a RPG forum and started commenting on there. The next thing you know, all those posts get deleted too, and they're having a big Q&A with Gazillion. And everywhere we went to try to bring up our issues, we found ourselves being censored. And these were hundreds of people who spent thousands of dollars on this game. Anytime somebody said anything critical, it only happened when things got bad, you know, for the game. And I don't know, they're a private company, so their finances aren't necessarily public information. But I realized that, you know, now I happen to charge my in-game currency with Amex, and they're real good about getting it out.
Yeah.
But it was really hard to explain to them what an in-game currency was, that I charged it, why I didn't get what I paid for, or I did, but then I can't use it because I don't have access to my account anymore. And it made me think about some of these things are visceral or fugitive, and you buy something thinking that you're going to be able to play for a couple of years, and next thing you know, they're either out of business or you get banned. And almost every game's terms of service prevents you from even suing the company. You agree to do a corporate arbitration, and that.
Just so you know, most of those terms are not enforceable by law.
Yeah, I contacted an attorney to find out about that, but you have to challenge that in a court before you can get to the port where you sue, and you have to do that where the game company is, not where you are. Right. Whereas if they just ripped you off, you could file small claims in your own location. So it just, I don't know if it's an actual question, but the lack of consumer protections, and what do you guys think of in-app purchases in general for people that are expecting to be able to play for the long term? Because you don't lay down a couple $100 for costumes if you're only going to play for a week.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of a bit of a troubling trend I've seen in gaming recently is not, not just in-app purchases, but always online games, right? So you buy a game for $60, play it for 6 months, developer goes under, shuts down the servers, all of a sudden you can't play your game anymore. I don't think it's limited to just in-app purchases. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a problem.
The scale of money,
I mean, $60 versus hundreds and hundreds of dollars for repeated in-app purchases. But it's the same problem on a smaller scale. But is probably, I would imagine, a little more relatable for the average person. Die-hard players absolutely will spend Hearthstone. I've spent way too much money on Hearthstone. Die-hard players will spend a lot of money, but the average player just can't even fathom spending $200 on a game. Like that's, but yeah, I mean, it is definitely a problem, and I honestly don't have a good answer as to what kind of protections can be put in place for that.
Here's I hate to talk about login, and please tell me to shut up about law if this is boring. But ultimately what this comes down to is the removal of our property rights as a society. Back in the day, you bought a item, it was a tangible property, and it was yours. You could resell it at any price you want. You can do whatever you want to it because it was your property. Now we've moved into the arena in the video game space where you buy property and there's a caveat in the contract you sign that it's not your property, you are licensing it. Yeah. And they have the right to revoke said license at any point.
And it's not just video games. John Deere is actually working right now to
Ford is trying to tell people that you don't own your car, it's a license.
Yeah.
And I'm not a cute puppy or a little girl, so a politician standing up to pass a law to protect me, it's not really going to be in their interest. I don't think the gaming community, we don't have the political pull to get some laws in place.
We don't have the political pool, but we have the monetary pool.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
It's one of the
Isn't
largest.
that sometimes that's more important, right?
Tell
Even
me where
politics,
to donate. You're the lawyer.
Because politics are money, baby. And it's all about being smart and trying to make a change, right?
We really thought we were supporting a game we loved, and then it started going and, was constantly under development, and next thing you know, nobody could play. Yeah. I mean, I won't do that again, but boy, we didn't think we were doing anything stupid at the time.
Right. And I absolutely want to say, punishing a player of your game, somebody who has supported you financially, for speaking their mind critically about your game is one of the most despicable things I can think of. That's just a really ridiculous approach. I have a background in community management. I know how these things work, and frankly, that's not how these things work. Yeah, I mean, that's, I'm really sorry to hear about that. I've heard stories like that before, and it angers me to no end every time I hear something like that.
Get everyone together, contact the AG of the state, and file with the Better Business Bureau. The FTC is now cracking down on video game companies hardcore. They fined only recently PlayStation for false advertisement for their PlayStation Vita because they showed on their advertisements that you would have cross-play with every game on your PlayStation, and that ended up being not true, and they got banged by the government for it about 2 weeks ago. So the government is starting to pay attention.
Well, I just wanted to say one last thing before I let the next person ask. Make sure if you're involved in any that you print out copies of your receipt in your account, because once they deny you access, you don't necessarily have any proof that you had an account, you don't have access to your receipts or your purchases. That's what we found with Gazillion. There's no record that we even existed because it was all in their servers and
course
nobody
not.
bothered to print it out.
We're
So
like the NSA.
yeah, so
I mean, that's
you know,
absolutely sound advice.
definitely buyer beware.
Sorry that happened to you, man. If you need a hug afterwards, I will oblige.
You got better hugs over there.
Hey, you never had one of my hugs, so you don't know what you're missing.
No,
We'll do that
sure,
after
go
the
for
panel.
it.
Go right ahead.
I'm free for hugs. I think I already know your opinion, I guess, just from what your statement was on that, as far as tangibility for, I guess, indie developers and such. Like in these Kickstarters, I guess that's a topic that we've been on. And how do you feel that the quality of a product that can be sold as far as an indie game goes, maybe even with licensings that have been, I guess, kind of pulled? Maybe the Nintendo 64 right now is the new retro 64 they're talking about and stuff. They're thinking about allowing you to play old school games and stuff. But indie developers actually coming up with actual physical cartridge games for resale and all these other mom and pop shops and or play and trades and such. What are y'all's opinions about that and the product itself, just personally? Do y'all think that's a great idea, or do you think that that might be a flop in the market? Or
I feel like that's the space that IndieBox is looking to fill. You know, we talked about that earlier, but I mean, they take indie games and they package them for you. They put a bunch of, you know, the full color instruction manual and all the random swag and the game on a USB key. Like, I feel like that is kind of the tangibility that a lot of people, you know, crave and miss from, you know, the old days of gaming. And yeah, I mean, I feel like there's definitely a market for it, but I feel like it's going to be up to third parties to fill that market, because indie developers have neither the time nor the money to actually put these together themselves. You know, they put every penny they have into making these games. They can't afford the, you know, $1,000 or whatever to, you know, box them up and ship them out and stuff. So I think it's definitely an awesome thing to have, but it's probably going to be filled by third parties.
It's also because when Konami tries to, let's say, erase a game from my fucking hard drive, I can be like, take this box off my dead hands.
I don't have any more to say about that. I agree with these guys.
Thank you. And I
Also,
think we've got
screw
time for
Konami.
one more question. So
Yeah, we have about
Thank
5
you.
minutes left, 4 minutes left, 2 minutes left.
yeah, coming up.
So
That was really nice of you. Thank you.
You are a gentleman.
Basically, I just want to know your opinions about trying to move like the modding community into a marketable area to where they can like, sell game mods.
I want to say off the bat that the modding community is one of the most amazing communities in the gaming space, and in my opinion, are the #1 reason that allows longevity to games.
Yeah.
That's all. They deserve everything. Like, they are the fans that bring what players expect from the publishers.
Yeah. So, as far as monetizing mods, you know, Steam just tried that. It didn't go very well. I'm not sure that there is a good way to monetize mods without just creating a total upset and uproar in the communities that you're trying to reach with your product. So I think ultimately, you know, one thing I've seen a lot of in the industry is you know, the biggest modders, you know, the most prolific and well-known modders for a specific game or even a company, if they transcend games, can often get picked up by that company as an employee. So I feel like supporting the modders that you really like, trying to you know, getting their name out there, spreading the word amongst your friends and such, is probably the best way you can support them, because, you know, the more people know about them, the more the company hears about them, the better the chances they have of you know, picking up a lucrative career in the industry going forward.
And a lot of hardcore modders have like websites, or they're a part of communities that have a donate button on their website, and donate because they put insane amounts of work into those things.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to put this out there. I think Steam's modding monetization project failed because of Steam, not because of the modders, because Steam did not have any consumer protections in place for it. They allowed crap to pop up on their platform for cost and allowed an arena where consumers no longer could buy in to something and reliably feel like it was safe or worth their money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. I think that about does it for us
Yeah,
today. I
it
think
is
we
6
have
o'clock.
Officially run out of time, so I just want to say once again, I'm Josh Vanderwall.
Janelle Bonanno.
And Josh Engen.
Thank you all so much for coming, and everybody on Twitch, thank you for tuning in. You definitely check us out if you enjoyed our chat today. We do a podcast on the Escapist every week, so we'll look forward to hearing from you. There.
Yeah, check us out on escapistmagazine.com. And thank you guys so much for coming. This wouldn't have been a panel without each and every one of you. So give yourselves a round of applause.
Thanks, guys.
Yay!
We did it.
Man, I didn't even get through half of my notes.
That was awesome. This
That's
is
the
like the
best.
best crowd ever.
You guys